So, hello, and a very, very warm welcome to this 20th session on Maitreya Asanga's text about Buddha nature, the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, also known as the Ratna Gotra Vibhanga. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to those of you here, sort of live. I don't know how live this is, but live, and the same to those who are joining us later on YouTube. So, as always, we start with this very, very precious, very necessary moment of motivation. You know, it's like when you go into a shrine room, you take your shoes off outside. And so when we come into this learning space of Dharma, we take off our worldly thoughts and leave them outside the door and give ourselves wholeheartedly, one-pointedly, beautifully, with a loving heart, caring for all beings and thinking of Dharma as like vital nourishment, like oxygen that we need very, very much for ourselves, for everybody. So, and then, I mean, that's how we start, and it's very important. Really, the idea is we stay like that all the way through. Because if you just start like that and then go and put your shoes on, you know, it's like going into a shrine room, taking your shoes off, and then going outside to pick up your shoes and taking them back in the shrine. Not much use. So, anyway, let's do our prayers. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long, be healthy, be well provided for. May they have good friends and find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty. And most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being, totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru Am kurim arjite karote keore tejovati oloyane Bishudane male malapan aye kukure kaka grase Grasana omuki paramuki amuki shame dawane Sawa graha bandhanane negri hitva Sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savidha buddhamudra Annodgatita sava mare butsarita parishuddhe Biga shantu sava mara kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you and we are one. So let's start briefly with our usual zoom in to where we are. Of all the Dharma teachings, we have those directly from the Buddha, given in various places, in various situations. They're called the Sutra, and then we have the Shastra, which are not something new, but they are the way the Buddha's teachings are organized, presented to us, made more understandable, unpacked, and so on. This was done by the great masters after the Buddha. Of those great masters, they're called the main pillars. The two main pillars of Mahayana Buddhism are Nagarjuna and Asanga. We are studying Asanga's text, which is focused on the third turning of the wheel of Dharma and gives us, amongst other things, the Buddha nature teachings. This text itself is in two main parts. Well, it's actually in three parts, technically. The good beginning, which is the title and the homage, the good end, which is the dedication, and the good middle, which is all of it, really, except for the beginning and the end. And so that good middle is in two main parts. The first, in 3 chapters of Vajra points, is about the goal that we aim to achieve. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then the second part is about the cause for attaining that goal. 4 chapters, 4 Vajra abodes, Buddha nature, enlightenment, enlightened qualities, enlightened activity. Just now, we're nearing the end of the 4th chapter, Buddha nature. That in itself is in 3 parts, and first the 3 great statements. All beings have Buddha nature, they all have it the same, and this gives a potential. That's the first thing, 3 very, very important statements. Then 10 detailed explorations of Buddha nature, because it's such a profound thing to understand. Then lastly, 9 examples. We're in the 9 examples, and as you've seen, we go first through the examples. So all 9 show us how 2 things can coexist. And these 2 things have very different natures. One is concealed, and that is something extraordinarily precious, shown through 9 examples. And the other is an outer covering, which is doing the concealing, is hiding, which is something of a very different character, nature. It comes, it goes, it's impure, but nevertheless it's there, and it's covering up what is very precious. So we went through those 9 examples, the Buddha in the lotus, the honey in the swarm of bees, and the grains inside the husks, and so on, to get that general point. And then in the last session, we came back to the 9 examples, and we worked our way through the 9 outer impurities which are doing the concealing. And if you remember, we applied those to the 5 stages of the path, and we saw how one by one those examples were examples showing us how is the nature of desire and anger and ignorance, and those in the active state and those not, and then in arhats, what's there still in a very subtle, fine way, blocking their minds and so on. So we did that last time. Today, we carry on in the text, and now we're looking at the 9 examples in terms of numbers. Okay, 9 examples, and we're going to see how they represent Buddha nature, of course, but Buddha nature in 3 perspectives, let's say. 3 perspectives. As Dharmakaya, as suchness and as our potential. Well, this part now is very deep, and we'll go through it verse by verse. As is often the case in this text, the first verse of a section is very key. So now we've zoomed in. Take a deep breath, sharpen up your mind, and here we go. So we are in the text that we're following. Then we're on page 172 and verse 144. And now it starts with it meaning Buddha nature. Its three natures are Dharmacaya, Tatata, and Gotra. So three Sanskrit words. To be understood respectively through 3, 1, and 5 examples. So as we go through our 9 examples, the first 3 are about Dharmakaya. The next one is about, the Sanskrit is Tatata. Tatata. In Tatata, Tata is the Indo-European language root for our word that. So, and ta at the end is the same as in English, ness. So literally thatness. Thatness, suchness, isness, any word that's imprecise in a sense, because it is something that is so profound that as soon as we use any specific word, we've lost it. If we said blackness, sweetness, any word, blackness excludes all the other colors, sweetness excludes sour, bitter, spicy, and so on. We're talking about something which is so universal, here all the time, that we can only call it, that, and we can only call a Buddha one who became that. Tatata, thatness, gata, gata means became. So we say, it sounds, when we say Sanskrit and prayers, tathagata sounds nice. I don't know if it sounds like that to you, but when we say it, when we do mantras, these long Sanskrit mantras, and we get tathagata, it sounds like it's longer and juicier than Buddha or whatever, sugata, tathagata, and so on. But it just means the one who became that, it, whatever it is. The Sanskrit's very raw. It's not far away, abstract, holy kind of that. Very direct. All of those words, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, as we'll see a bit today. So anyway, 3 natures. The first 3 examples are about Dharmakaya. The 4th example is about Tatata, suchness, thatness, isness. And the last examples are about what's called here Gotra. Earlier on in the text, we had an unpacking of the term Gotra, which is hard for a translator because it has many meanings, and if you translate it by any one of you, you exclude the others. It would be easier to say Gotra, but we call it usually potential. Our Buddha nature, our Buddha potential, it's what we all have, but that needs working on. So the last 5 examples are about that. So the first point, when this is explained by Trungpa Rinpoche, Khenpo Surtim, our teachers, is to understand that although we talk about three natures, it is us talking about three natures. It, that, Buddha nature, whatever we call it, does not have any compartments. Remember these three vital statements. It is indivisible. It's in everyone, it's indivisible. There is no way you can find three separate things in Buddha nature. It's not compartmentalized one bit. But from our point of view, as we try and understand it, and from the Buddha's teaching point of view, when the Buddha gives us help through words and ideas so that we can get a better idea of what we are longing to become, Buddha, then these three aspects of this one nature are helpful. So the first one is dharmakaya. So none of us have a clue, right, what dharmakaya is. Unless you're Buddha, and if you're Buddha, what the hell are you doing here? I mean, in a Ken Holmes talk, we saw a week before that, 10th level bodhisattvas, Maitreya, Chinrezig, Karmapa, and so on. 10th level bodhisattvas can teach the same as a Buddha. What you get from them, you would be exactly as good as much as perfect as what a Buddha could teach you. But the difference between their own realization and that of a Buddha, do you remember, is the same as the difference between a speck of dust and a planet? Speck of dust and a planet. Or the water in an ox's hoofprint and the water in an ocean. Huge difference. So when we say that difference, what are we talking about? It is in their realization, in the etymological sense of made real. Not realizing in the conceptual sense where, light bulb moment, you think something. Realization in the sense of real, made real, realization. So the realization of dharmakaya. We have the complexity of the Buddha's teachings, which are kind of fixed. We make our way through it step by step, but they're there. But then we also have our own meditation instruction and the way we practice Mahamudra, preliminaries, shamatha, vipassana, and so on, whereby we have instructions about our mind and realizing it, mind like space, thoughts and feelings coming and going like clouds, all that kind of stuff. We have a gradual sort of method for exploring our mind. That is very wonderful and absolutely necessary. Because otherwise it's all kind of out there, it's abstract, it's like studying a topic at university or something. Dharmakaya, tatata, bodhisattva levels. The reality is in our mind. It's not really about abstract ideas, it's about you and me and discovering who we are, discovering what this mind is. And so dharmakaya, all of that to say, we don't really know, but we're starting to get a clue or a clue about a clue. And as we go through the 5 stages of the path, then it gets better and better. In particular, in the second stage of the path, it's all about meditating, practicing mindfulness and so on, so that we get to know our own mind and to observe minds. What is mind? What is its nature? First bodhisattva level, we get the breakthrough. Remember, that's like we've been in the dark, and then second stage of the path is like pre-dawn. It's not dark anymore, there's some light. Third stage of the path, first bodhisattva level, this is like actually seeing the sun, where all the light's coming from, just rising, and so on. So we've been through that a few times, especially in the last couple of weeks, so it's, I hope, fresh in your memory. So what can we say about Dharmakaya? Dharmakaya is often equated to shunyata, voidness, emptiness. And here we're exploring the third turning of the wheel of Dharma that assumes that you've already mastered the second turning of the wheel of Dharma about shunyata, emptiness. And so you don't think of it as just space. Although in our meditation instructions and practice, we might be learning to discover the pure space of mind, the space between thoughts, the space between mental events. And that space is a very, very precious discovery. Very, very precious. When you sit, you meditate, things come, things go. Memories, feelings, ideas, plans, fantasies, all sorts of things come and go. So when you examine those things, everything there has a cause. It doesn't just come from nowhere. Everything has a history, a reason behind it. The ideas you have, the memories you have, all of it is a creation. And as we'll see in the verses we explore today, various levels of creation, the end results, the karma that makes them, and so on and so on. But everything that comes and goes in your mind is a product of interdependence, cause and effect, karma, and so on. Everything. And it comes and it goes. Where it comes from, nobody knows. Sounds like a song, doesn't it? Where it comes from, nobody knows. Where it goes to, nobody knows. And while it's there, then we recognize, if you dreamt of a donkey, you thought of a donkey, why did you think of a donkey? And then you realize, well, first of all, in your life, you know what a donkey is. You've seen them, you've read about them, you've seen them on the telly. You know what a donkey is, and then somebody mentioned donkey yesterday, and now you've got a donkey coming up in your mind, and then it's gone. And then it's, what am I going to have for supper? There's a reason behind everything. It is the product of interdependence. It is the outer shell covering the Buddha nature. So in order to discover the Buddha nature, we need to discover the space. And that discovery of the space in which things come and go is a vital part of our development. We have to consolidate that discovery. If you can consolidate space, I don't know how you do that, but anyway. So when we do practice, the spaciousness, the nothingness from which everything manifests is very important. But here we're not looking at your practice, which probably corresponds to the second stage of the path, the stage of junction and integration, where you are learning in reality about voidness, not in ideas, in the reality of yourself, you're discovering the voidness of your mind. But the voidness as interdependence, not voidness as absence, as interdependence. So this is deep. It's very deep. We do lots of exploration of that in the second turning of the Wheel of Dharma. Here, we're beyond that. It's assumed. So the first three examples will be about dharmakaya. And dharmakaya, dharma means 10 things. Kaya means embodiment, of what embodies, what is. What is dharma? So dharma is the Sanskrit word for things, phenomena, and it covers all things that can happen in our minds. Anything that can come up in the mind is a dharma. And sometimes they're classified. We can get 84,000 if we look at the different categories and so on. It doesn't matter, things. So we've got the embodiment of things. Dharmakaya is like the space of everything. The word itself sounds like in Sanskrit the space of everything, like the universal space in which anything, everything can happen. But then dharma, another meaning, is of course the Buddha's teaching. So what is the Buddha's teaching? Well, it's about things and how they happen and why they happen. It's the same thing. Buddha is teaching us things. You know, we say Buddha teaches Dhamma, and it's all very Indian or Asian. So Buddha, the one who woke up, is teaching us about Dhamma, things. That's nice. That's what it sounds like, feels like in Sanskrit. Somebody who woke up is telling us about how things are and why they're like that and what we can do about it. Beautiful. Buddha teaches Dharma, then it becomes something else. So, but Dharmakaya does mean the body of the teachings, the power to teach, where all the teachings come from. So we've seen in the first 3 chapters, when we become Buddha, automatically we become this treasury of Dharma, because there's total clarity about everything. So we can help people by explaining and so on. So Dharmakaya is represented in the first 3 examples, both in the sense of what embodies everything and what embodies the wisdom, the teachings about everything. The first example, which is, remember, the Buddha, a real Buddha, not a Buddha statue, a real Buddha inside a rotting lotus flower. The rotting lotus in one way represents desire as a mind poison, as a klesha. But then all the mind poisons come from desire and attachment. And when we look into them, how they work in Abhidharma, then desire, clinging, involvement, attachment, all those sticky things give rise to all the other mind poisons, the 3 or the 5 main ones, the 21 subsidiary ones, all come from desire. So this first example has the rotting lotus as what is concealing, and then what it conceals is a real Buddha. Now, the reason it's a real Buddha is because there is nothing that could exemplify the Buddha. There's nothing in this world at all like Buddha mind, awakened mind. It says in the text, there is not one atom of similarity between our worldly experience, our 5 senses, 5 aggregates and so on, everything that we experience right now. There is nothing which is similar to Buddha mind. So there's no example. No example we can take. We can't say like this. So it has to be a real Buddha that's inside the lotus. So let's look at the verse. Verse 144 told us the three natures of suchness are dharmakaya, tatata, gotra, to be understood by these 9 examples, first 3, fourth one, and the remaining 5. Verse 145, dharmakaya should be known as 2. The perfectly immaculate dharmadhatu and the favorable conditions for it, the teachings in their profound and manifold aspects. So this verse introduces the term dharmadhatu. Dharmakaya, dharmadhatu is not something different. You haven't got a dharmakaya somewhere and a dharmadhatu somewhere else. Same thing viewed by us in 2 different aspects. So dharma, things, dhatu means expanse, space. Actually means element as well, but anyway, in this sense it's more the space of things. Things are what they are. Each thing is what it is. Amazing. Diversity, variety. If I walk in my garden, they're fading now. Spring came and went very quickly, but anyway, so many flowers, leaves, insects, and so on. It's such a diversity. I don't know if I could ever count all the different things just in a few square meters. The amazing diversity of things, but things also means things in here, thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, experiences, possible experiences. These are all dharmas, phenomena, things. And dhatu, the expanse of things. And they all are what they are. So we look into that when we study Abhidharma. Fire is fire, hot, burn, water is fluid, and so on. Everything. So there are things. As Buddha teaches, things don't just happen. They all come through causal processes, karma, cause and effect. Nothing happens without a reason. If things could happen without a reason, this Ken who's talking to you could suddenly become a cauliflower. Why not? It's never going to happen, I hope, because the cauliflower can't finish the talk. But if things could happen without a reason, why not? And you could become an artichoke. And you're not going to become an artichoke. Through the rest of this talk, you're going to stay, you are going to be me. Things in their enormous, endless diversity interact, create conditions, make more things, comes and goes all the time, split second, never changing all the time, never fixed. This is the meaning of shunyata, emptiness, not blank space. This intangibility where everything is interdependent, but you can't catch it. It's quicksilver. You try and catch it, it's gone. And those of us who meditate, which I hope is all of us, you've seen this. You try and catch your mind, it's gone. You're like a cat or a dog trying to catch its tail. The faster you go, the faster the tail goes beyond you. Or they say like a sword trying to cut itself. It can't. No matter how fast or how skillful the swords person is, Sword cannot cut itself, can't catch it. So when we have Dhammadhatu here, this first aspect of Dharmakaya, which we call Dhammadhatu, we're talking about the natural expanse where everything is what it is. It has its own truth. Its own truth is its isness, the heat of fire, the wetness of water, and so on. The pain of samsara, the joy of nirvana. So this is the first aspect. We call that Dhammadhatu. The second aspect is what will help us to be wise and true and clear about the isness of everything. And these are the Dharma teachings. So then Dharmakaya in the second sense is the kaya, the embodiment of the Dharma teachings, which gives us the methods and the ideas and so on, so that we become more and more awake. Buddha. Bud means to wake up. We wake up more and more to the way things are, and most essentially, the way we are, the way mind is. So that's that verse, or the first part, Dharmakaya should be known as tu. Now it doesn't just say Dhammadhatu, it says the perfectly immaculate Dhammadhatu. So it's what is not just immaculate, immaculate means not polluted, not stained, not spoiled in any way. That's already immaculate, means that. But perfectly immaculate. Is this a writer's abundance of expression? I mean, because immaculate means not maculate. Maculate means spoiled. Means unspoiled, but perfectly. Why say perfectly? Unspoiled means unspoiled. Why? Because we have the 5 stages of the path. And we saw in the earlier section, as we go up to first bodhisattva level and then through level after level, it's so pure. Their minds are so unimaginably beautiful, pure, the embodiment of Dhamma, but still there are traces to be removed. And these traces of karma, of klesha and so on act as limits. Taisittupa often speaks of limitations of the mind and limitless mind. So when it says perfectly immaculate, it means when we've gone through all the stages, even beyond 10th level bodhisattva, and then it is absolutely, totally, perfectly pure. And then what happens then? Dhammadhatu. Everything is what it is. Meaning, from that level, every being is who he, she, or it is. All of the reasons and the karma, cause and effect is what it is, their journey, their pathways, everything totally clear. Perfectly immaculate Dhammadhatu, space of everything and everyone. That's one aspect. And then the second, the favorable conditions, the teachings, in their profound and manifold aspects. This is my job, I have to explain that. So it's always in numbers. Dharmakaya is 2, Dhammadhatu, and now the teachings. The teachings are also in 2, and they're called the profound teachings and the vast teachings. This is a huge topic, and very often we come across 2 code words in Dharma teachings. It says the vast and the profound Dharma. Sounds nice, but it has a lot of meaning. Very often, the vast teachings are the ones that come from Asanga, and the profound teachings are the ones that come from Nagarjuna. But these are code words because Asanga's teachings, they're as profound, if not more profound, than Nagarjuna's. But it means that Nagarjuna really put the emphasis on the deepest part, which is shunyata, which is interdependence. So we've got all the teachings from Nagarjuna and his disciples like Chandrakirti and so on, the whole lineage of those who developed the various schools that come from Nagarjuna. Then a couple of centuries later, Asanga, his brother Vasubandhu, and then their disciples and followers, who, because Nagarjuna had already established the second turning of the wheel of Dharma teachings on Shunyata, then they could, assuming that people digested those, show the importance of the path and what are called the vast teachings about the stages of the path. So that's why, for instance, from Vasubandhu, Asanga's brother, we get the Dasabhumika Sutra, the 10 Levels Sutra, which tells us about the 10 Bodhisattva levels and so on. This, in our own development of wisdom, will be probably the way we'll go. We will labor a lot and struggle a lot and meditate a lot to understand what the Buddha was getting at in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, Nagarjuna's teachings on emptiness. And as we'll see in this text, I hope we'll get there today, then the dream-like, cloud-like nature of things. And then after that, the next step will be the vast teachings, because the penny will drop, the importance will be understood of the stages of the path. Can be a bit of a painful awakening, but maybe we're not there yet, so no need to talk about that. But understanding the second turning about emptiness and shunyata is not that difficult. They make a big deal about it. There's lots and lots of scriptures, but it's not that difficult. Once you've got it, you've got it. The stages of the path and the necessity to understand that. If you're going to be a bodhisattva and you're going to help people, there's no point giving teachings belonging to this area to people who are in that area. You need to understand people, their potential, where they're at, the baggage they carry, everything, and the relevance of the stages of the path and how different teachings are needed at different level. And if the beautiful teachings for this level are given to somebody else, they become confusing. They become dangerous. They're not helpful. If we want to become bodhisattvas, we want to help people. And so an understanding of the path is kind of how we go. So that's what that verse is sort of pointing us in a direction. That verse, we could spend days and days on it. So let's go back to it. The Dharmakaya should be known as two. The perfectly immaculate Dhammadhatu, embodiment of everything, and the favorable conditions for it, the teachings, in their profound and manifold aspects. Page 173, verse 146. As it transcends the world, that, the business, whatever it was that Buddha became, as it transcends the world, there is no example manifest for it within the world, Thus it has been represented by representing the essence of by the form of a Tathagata. Okay, let's not spend too much time there, but we do need to understand each word, each line a bit. There's no example for it, so it's represented by the form of a Tathagata. The form is not everything a Tathagata is. We're coming back to that in the coming verses, but the form is what manifests to us. We have eyes. Funny things, us, bodies. You've got one. I've got one. It's all we've got. This is our tool. We have these electromagnetic frequencies. When there are certain frequencies, we see things. But then they get less and less fast. And they become infrared. And they get less and less fast. And all of a sudden you can hear something. There's sounds. And then they get slower and slower, and they go out of the sound spectrum. And so on. This is all we've got. Eyes that can see what human eyes can see. Ears that can hear this. Nose that can smell things within immediate distance. I mean, just as well. Otherwise, maybe I'd be smelling, how many are we? 38 people here. I'd be smelling all of you in all of your rooms. So we've only got this nose, which can smell what's quite close to it. A tongue, that's even more close. I can't lick you. I don't want to. And then our body with its nerve endings, which can feel warmth, cold, and hunger, thirst, and so on. This is all we have. So it says manifest as a form of the Tathagata. It's not that the Buddha has forms. That would be complicated. But with this equipment we have, we can experience part of what Buddha is through Buddha's emanations, manifestations in our consciousness, which is not what Buddha is, but it's what appears to us as Buddha. That's what that verse is talking about. So now we come on in the next verse, 147, which goes to examples 2 and 3. You remember the honey amidst the swarm of bees and the various grains inside their husks and kernels. The teachings in their subtle and profound aspect should be known to be like the unique taste of honey. The teachings in their subtle and profound aspects. What we had just now. Profound and vast. Profound about shunyata, voidness, emptiness. Vast, the teachings on the path. So the teachings in their subtle and profound aspects should be known to be like the unique taste of honey. So we're looking in these 9 examples at the inside thing. So it's honey that was amidst the bees. The teachings in their manifold aspect, which mean manifold means the teachings on the path, are like the various grains in their husks. So this is quite easy. That first verse about dharmakaya and so on, is very, very, very deep. We can only understand it as much as we can through our own experience and teachings we've heard. Here it's easier. So honey. Yeah. You've all tasted honey, I assume. Huh? Everybody? Yeah. Okay, all right. And if you had your eyes shut and I put some on your tongue, you could probably tell me that's honey, right? All right? Good. Everybody's still there. All still awake. Good. So then, but then it's a strange thing, because honey, I love honey. So many different sorts, and they taste so different. Here, I almost exclusively eat lavender honey. I live close to the lavender fields of Provence, and the honey is just, it's to die for, you know. But then once, when I was on a journey, I stopped at a motorway place, and some local producer was selling melon flower honey. That tastes so different. And then you get these really strong ones, you know, from some herbs like rosemary and so on. I mean, they don't taste the same. They're really different honeys. They taste very, very different. But they all taste of honey. They all taste of honey. That's what we need to get our head around here. So this is the example for the profound teachings, the shunyata teachings, emptiness. It shows the interdependence, the vast, interdependent, interconnected world of everything that gives rise to everything else. The Buddha's profound teachings show this interdependence and empty, dreamlike, cloud-like quality of everything, from the worst hell and the pain and the misery and the torture of a broken heart to the bliss of meditation and a yogi. Everything. The Buddha's deep teachings show how it's like the honey with all the different tastes. Everything is interdependent and interconnected, and that's why nothing has own nature, because everything depends on other things to be what it is. Interdependence. Nothing has own nature because everything depends on other to be what it is. That one teaching is the one taste of honey behind the Buddha's profound teachings. And that taste of emptiness, of dreamlike interdependence, is in everything. So that's the example of the honey. And then now we come to the other aspect of Dharmakaya as teachings, which are the vast teachings. So the teachings that you need at the beginning of the path, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, teachings on precious human existence, impermanence, suffering, karma, cause and effect, and so on, all the way through to the teachings that bodhisattvas, mahabodhisattvas need. So many. Now, the example is the grains inside the husk, rice, wheat, buckwheat. They're not the same, but the point is they are all nourishing. They are all food. And so what nourishes a beginner is different from what nourishes somebody further on, somebody even further on. And sometimes, Dharma teachings could seem like a contradiction. Marvelous, maybe it's going to blow the mind or screw up the mind of all these artificial intelligence things, which only know zeros and ones. So they could look through the Buddha's teachings in a split second. With a quantum computer, you could go through all the Buddha's teachings and all the Shastras in a split second. And they would go, but Buddha said this here, and Buddha says that there. And it doesn't say the same thing. It's like your own teacher. Sometimes they say, you need to relax more. Sometimes they say, you need to get your act together, you need discipline. Do I need to tighten up? Do I need to relax? Did Buddha say both? Yeah. Did Buddha change his mind? Is he saying everybody needs to relax? Everybody needs to tighten up? Of course not. It's about you, here, now, what we need. Stages of the path. Strokes for folks. And sometimes we need to really have very clear, strongly held ideas about morality and ethics and so on to get us out of the mess we've made for ourselves. And then sometimes we need to see through all ideas, all notions, and so on. So this is, if it's a good teacher, they will give the right teachings at the right time to the right person. It's like a doctor. It's often we compare Buddha or a good Lama to a doctor. You can't say what's the best medicine. You can't go into a pharmacy and say, okay, what's the rarest, most expensive medicine you've got? And they say this, then I want it, only the best for me. It might make you very, very sick. Sometimes all you need is an aspirin, paracetamol. The best medicine is what you need today, right now, for what you've got. It's as simple as that. So the Buddha's vast teachings are tailored to different beings, different capacities, different stages of the path, but they're all nourishing. They're all food for our evolution. Let's leave those two examples there. So now we've done, it said the first three examples are about dharmakaya. Dharmakaya, the real thing. That was the first example of the Buddha. Dharmakaya, the body of the teachings, the honey, and the different grains. The fourth example, standalone, is about tathata, thusness. And that's the example of the gold that had fallen amongst the rubbish. Remember this centuries-old rubbish heap on the edge of a little village, and buried gold. So it's verse 148, page 174. Thatness, or suchness, or isness, and tathata is the actual word, is said to be similar to the substance of gold, because this essence is immutable, perfectly pure, and noble. So gold is an excellent example. Gold as a metal, it's incorruptible, doesn't react with things. No matter what's in the rubbish heap, nothing will transform it chemically into something else. It will stay there as gold, unchanged, for centuries until somebody finds it. So this true nature of beings, devoid of all illusions, or anything which is not the perfection of Buddha wisdom, this pure essence of mind, essence of being, isness, as it really is, as each moment really is, as you really are, as the universe really is. The essence, the one in our prayer to Vajradhara, many of you know that wonderful verse, this nothing whatsoever, it can give rise to anything whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever gives rise to anything whatsoever. This is what we're talking about here. It never changes, never will change. Changeless nature. And it is pure because it is free of any innate or transient impurities. Big topic of this text. We have two sorts of impurities. They are called innate impurities and transient impurities. Buddha nature never had innate impurities. Innate means it's part of it, means you can't get rid of it. It is part of what it is. That never was. It's always been pure. That's one aspect of purity. The other aspect is covered up. Not part of what it is, but covering it up. That's called transient impurities, represented by our 9 outer examples. They can be got rid of. So we talk of the twofold purity. And this is a very important topic for those of you practicing Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and so on, because you often hear true, beautiful thing. You are Buddha. Taisitapa is always telling people, you are Buddha. So he says it so well, so nicely, and he tells us again and again. And Dzogchen is telling us all the time about the perfection and purity that's everywhere. True. But, this word, but, however, it's covered up, so it's no use to us. It's covered up. So there's this transient impurity. So the twofold purity, even though you are Buddha all the time, unless you do the work of Dharma, you'll never make it real. You'll never get the benefits. You won't be able to do for other people what Buddha can do. You won't be able to free your own mind like Buddha has done and Bodhisattvas have done. It's huge. It's huge. This is why this text is here, to help us really sort this out for ourselves. This seeming contradiction. How can I be Buddha? You look in the mirror. I look in the mirror. I feel sorry for that old guy in the mirror. Really, I'm going to do something to help him. Really, it breaks my heart. And I look there, you poor old... Well, I use swear words when I'm looking in the mirror, but anyway. And, or not nice terms. So we need to know that we are Buddha all the time, but that it is covered up. That's why these 9 examples and all this chapter and all this text is there to help us in reality sort that out so we can manage our lives beautifully, skillfully, and keep going in the right direction. So that verse was about tathata, the isness, which leaves us 5 examples now which are about Gotra. Now we're looking down. First we looked up at the very highest Dharmakaya, then Dharmakaya's teachings, and now the isness. But now we're looking at this potential that we carry through 5 examples. So it says one should know, verse 149, the potential as having 2 aspects. Similar to the treasure under the ground of the pauper's hut, and similar to the tree growing out from the fruit, the seed of the fruit, like a mango fruit that gradually makes a shoot and becomes a tree. And these are known as the potential naturally present since beginningless time, and the potential which is perfected through proper cultivation. So when we look at Gotra or Buddha nature or your Buddha potential, there's something that's been there, we're looking at unchanged since beginningless time. It's quite funny in Tibetan, it's Yeneyopa. Well, I know not everyone's a native English speaker, and then English itself, as opposed to American English, has got its own peculiarities. But there's a term in English which you say it's been there for yonks. This word yonks, I don't know how many know the word yonks, but it conveys an idea. It means like, whoa, more than you could ever think of. Like, it's more than like ages or eons, yonks. So this yene in Tibetan, yene is like yonks. Yene yopa, yopa means is since forever. But forever sounds more like a technical term. And yene in Tibetan doesn't sound technical. It sounds really like, like always been there, yonks. Yene yopa, that potential that we've always had. If you start thinking about it, you'll weep. And if you don't weep, you're not thinking about it enough. You've always had it. Life after life after life after life. Wherever you've been, up, down, the fortunate lives, the blessed lives, and not so fortunate, not so blessed lives. It's always been there. Always been there. And it will always be there. And when we get to the end of our journey, it is. It was the verse we just looked at. Suchness, isness, as it is. So then, what can we do? We need to take away what's covering it up. As we saw in the earlier part of this course, it's what's called a result by removal. We don't make the causes for our Buddha-ness in the future. We cannot create Buddha. All our virtue and accumulations don't make Buddha. They're all there to take away what's covering up Buddha. When we talk about virtue and gathering the two accumulations, which on a relative level is so important, it sounds like we're kind of building up our Buddha. It's like collecting Lego pieces so you can make a giant Buddha or something. We are not. The nature of Dharma is destructive. All our Dharma practice is about getting rid of the mess, getting rid of the blockages, getting rid of the limitations. It's about taking stuff away. So we have like taking furniture out of a room. The result's an empty room. We don't make the emptiness. We take away what was gumming it up. So it's a result by removal. And unless we take away this timeless, changeless nature, which has always been there for yonks, will never do what it can do. Like all these examples, these precious things. The honey can't feed people, the grains can't feed people. The treasure can't make somebody rich, the poor man rich, and so on. Can't work. So when we look at our potential, we look at Buddha within, which is always there, but the Buddha within being made step by step more and more apparent, which is called the potential that we can work on, for instance. It's very hard to translate this one. I never found an adequate way to translate it. But anyway. So, our two examples, the treasure under the ground and the tree growing up from the fruit. The potential naturally present and that perfected through proper cultivation. Page 175, verse 150. From this twofold potential comes achievement of the three Buddha Gayas. The first through the former and the other two through the latter. So the first Buddha Gaya, which will be, well, let's look. We're going to go through this. So I'll read you the commentary rather than just the verse. This verse introduces the last three examples of Buddha nature as potential. So we've gone through in verse 149, the treasure, which is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, example 5, and the tree grown from the fruit, example 6. So we've got 3 more inner examples. And so the first of them, well, all 3 of them are about bringing out the Buddhahood. Buddha that we're bringing out, making apparent, has 3 aspects. We call the 3 kayas, or the 3 ways it's embodied. In the commentary, we have to make the point again that the 3 Buddha kayas are not 3 separate things. There is no where, no place, nowhere, no way. The Sambhogakaya, different from Dharmakaya, different from Nimanakaya. It's about us on our journey and how Buddha mind is perceived, how well or poorly we can perceive it. So we've got 3 examples, and they are about, now kind of you might be expecting, because I'm a person who studied Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya. Not quite. In this text, now we don't talk about Dharmakaya, we talk about Svabhavika Kaya, or Essence Kaya. So you can see here the analysis is threefold. The embodiment of the essence, Svabhavika Kaya, the embodiment of perfect expression, Sambhogakaya, and the embodiment as emanations, Nimanakaya. So verse 151 is about the essential Buddha, let's call it. The S is called Essence Kaya, or put it another way, I think it makes more sense, the quintessential Buddha. What is essentially Buddha? What Buddha really is. Buddha as only Buddhas will ever know it. That makes sense? The essential, quintessential, real Buddha, essence Buddha. So the embodiment of the magnificent essence should be known as similar to the statue made of precious substances. Example 7, the one that was wrapped up in the rags. Remember the stinky rags? And we looked at that in terms of what the stinky rags represent last time. So that's the example. Why? It says being natural and non-created and a treasure of jewel-like qualities. So I think these talks are long, aren't they? You're probably saturated by now. Could do with a cup of coffee and a croissant, something else. But I'm going to go on for a little bit. So a deep breath, and because we're almost at the end of these inner examples, you see. So now the statue, made of gold, set with precious gems. Okay, examples are never perfect. So if you've got a nitpicking mind, don't pick nits, right? But in this example, what we're looking at is gold. Now, although we get gold from gold ore, gold is gold. The actual gold that was in the statue has always been gold. The actual gold never changed. Even though in making the gold statue, a bit of the gold came from here and a bit of the gold came from there. It's the thing that the gold itself never changed. and then it's set with gems. I was watching something day before yesterday about cutting gems. It showed people taking original gems the way they're found in nature and then gradually putting them through machines till in the end they sort of sparkle. But the sparkly bit was always there. Never, they just took away the bits of rock and then faceted it and then polished it more in the end. But what you've got in the end has always been there. From our point of view, not. We see it as a rock, and then bit by bit we get the gem out, but the gem that's there in itself hasn't changed. So our gold statue set with diamonds and emeralds and sapphires and so on, it's very natural. Everything there is what it's always been. It's just been beautifully put together. Stages of the path, the work on ourselves, taking away the tattered rags and so on. So that is to represent svabhavikakaya, the essence of all the different ways in which Buddha manifests. And then the next example, if you remember, was the future Chakravartin inside the womb of the mother. So this poor, destitute woman in terrible circumstances carries a future protector, future universal monarch, doesn't know it. So this is a child that's going to grow and become the most wonderful relative being. So this represents Sambhogakaya, which is the way that bodhisattvas in the 10 level experience Buddha mind. Very wonderful. It's like a monarch, but it's like a child that grows. From bodhisattva level 1 to 2 to 2 to 3. The king is getting more and more splendid. Our understanding of the truth of our mind just goes from one wonderful level to an unimaginable next wonderful level, and next level with more qualities that are innate to Buddha mind. So it says, verse 152, the perfect expression, meaning Sambhogakaya, is like the Chakravartin, being endowed with the great Dharma's majesty. And then the last example of the 9, which was the golden image inside the clay mold. Remember, the clay had to be chipped away and then the image polished. This is Nirmanakaya, the emanations, which aren't really emanations. It means it's what we in the 6 realms, with our limited bodies and our 5 senses, or whatever senses we've got in different realms, what we can pick up of Buddha mind in our sensorial experience. See a Buddha, hear a Buddha teaching, and that makes sense in terms of our own vocabulary and experience, which we develop through this body, and so on. So how Buddha can manifest in our world, what we can experience of Buddha, is like that golden image. And it says, having the very nature of a representation. So there was a Buddha statue. Buddha statue. Buddha statue is a representation. It's a symbol. Except for very, very, very rare, exceptional circumstances, you can't go up to your Buddha statue and ask a question and get an answer like you can when you go to your Rinpoche, or if you could go to Shakyamuni Buddha. If you went to Shakyamuni Buddha, his presence will blow your mind, and he gives you the example and a practice that will be incredible. You go up and ask your Buddha statue, and you might wait a very long time. It represents what Buddha is in our world, on our shrine. And so the Nirmanakaya, what we can experience of Buddha in our world, connects us, represents for us what the real Buddha, the truth of being, the truth of mind, is. So there we've gone through our 9 inner examples. And now verse 153, and we'll stop there for today. It gives us a lot to think about. This ultimate truth, now we're looking back all the examples now, all of them, of the spontaneously arising, spontaneously born, is to be understood by faith alone. The orb of the sun may shine, but it cannot be seen by the blind. Sun shines, illuminates everything. But if your eyes are shut or you're blind, you can't see the sun, you can't see all the forms that are lit up and made super clear. What is our blindness? It's our lack of faith. Now, after all this blah, 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 Ken's been going on for almost, hour and a half. And all these ideas, and all these examples, and all this terminology and dharmakaya, and I didn't bother going into the Sanskrit for the potential as it naturally exists and the potential as it is to be developed and so on. All of that is to be understood by faith alone. And that's why in our Kagyu lineage, faith is so important. Faith you know about. I really hope you do, because it's part of the teachings on precious human existence. 10 freedoms, 8 assets, and 3 aspects of faith. So we mean all 3 aspects of faith here. And so that is the faith of conviction, whereby the more we study and learn about the Buddha's teaching, the more it makes sense. So there's that kind of faith. We have faith in it because it makes sense. And then there is faith in the sense of aspiration, is that we're really impressed. We're impressed by the Buddhas, we're impressed by our teachers, we're impressed by the Dharma, and so on. And we aspire to it. So even though we haven't got much of it yet, we've got a taste for it. It's like playing a musical instrument. It got you. When I was young, the guitar got me. I dropped out of engineering to play guitar. The guitar got me, but I couldn't play it well. I still don't play it well, but at the time I did play well at one point. We aspire, even though in our own practice, our own knowledge, we're only beginners. We know where we're going. We've got the taste for it. So there's that kind of faith. And it's like or the faith where you start to do a bit of exercise and your body feels good for it, and You can do more things, and you're losing weight, and you think this exercise is a good thing. I need to do a bit more. You can get out more and run more or do whatever it is. That kind of aspiration faith. Then the third type of faith is the faith of clarity. When you've got the experience, your practice is bearing fruit. How could it be anything else? It's clear to you. It's not Dharma out there, over there, that other people have achieved. It's happening for you. So those three aspects of faith will help us really bring these 9 examples to life. So let's dedicate anything that was good and useful in today's session. Then afterwards we have a little moment for discussion and questions and answers. May whatever virtue was created by our session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. In those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So thank you all very much for your patience, and now it's your turn. If you've got anything you'd like to contribute or questions, then...
I have 2 questions concerning the statue of the Buddha, the last example that you gave.
Mm-hmm.
So the image of the Buddha, the form of the Buddha, is giving us the inspiration, the faith, whatever we need. So what is the meaning of consecration of statues? Isn't the form of the Buddha enough?
Well, for Tibetans, let's put it this way, for Tibetans, of course, the form of the Buddha represents the Buddha, is something very sacred, and it's very important to see images, because in all the stuff we take in, all the images, all the impressions and so on, this reminds us of the wonder, the purity, and all the qualities of the Buddha. That is for sure. But for Tibetans, or certainly the Rinpoches I know, the main point of a statue is to house relics. And the relics, which is what we mean by consecration, usually there should be some relics, means that there is a material connection which, through the power of interdependence, connects us with whatever's inside the statue. So, for instance, quite often in the history of Samiling and the statues that were consecrated, then Rilnak, the black pills from the 16th Karmapa, were used as one of the things that consecrate. So when 16th Karmapa made that, he used various relics from the Rumtek treasury, including one of the tools Milarepa used to build the tower, and so on. So somehow in this seemingly material world in which we exist, there is this material connection with Milarepa, with all the 16 Karmapas, 17 Karmapas, and so on. For Tibetans, what's inside the statue is more important than the statue itself. And there is a problem with statues, because I've seen a lot of statues in my life. And out of 1,000 statues, there may be one or two that are so perfect and so harmonious that as soon as you look at them, it kind of, something happens in your heart center, and you kind of feel, yeah, probably Buddha's presence was a bit like that. And a lot of the others, you're trying not to see the imperfections because it's very hard to make a perfect statue. So although the form is a very precious reminder, once we've taken refuge, then even the ugly statues, we venerate them because of what they represent, not for what they are. But when there's a relic inside, that's the real thing. That's a real connection with past masters. Does that help? Yeah.
Is a bit more fuzzy. It's still not clear in my mind, but is this the form of the Buddha that makes us inspired and all that? What happens when there's a mistake? For example, that famous story with the old woman who thought that the bones of the dog were relics of the Buddha, and she became enlightened just through believing that these bones are the Buddha.
Tooth.
And in fact, a tooth, yes. In fact, she was totally mistaken.
No, because this is what this section's all about. It's, until we get to a certain level of the path, we cannot experience Buddha mind directly. So what have we got? We've got clues, representations, experiences, presences, none of which are the real direct experience, but they're things which help us along the way. So when it talks about Nirmanakaya, the real Nirmanakaya, we're not looking at statues, we're looking at the form, the way Buddha manifests in our world. When we study Nirmanakaya, we get 5 aspects, sometimes it's 4, of Nirmanakaya. There is the historical Nirmanakaya, which was Buddha Shakyamuni himself. Then there are what we call these days tulkus, or emanations in our world as spiritual beings. And then there are emanations of beings which are not ostensibly Dharma teachers, but they bring what's needed to the world. It can be as philanthropists, as scientists, as people who, as beings who help the world, and then there's manifestation in all sorts of ways to help people. It says Buddha could manifest as a dog, as a flower, as a bridge, and so on. So when we look at Nirmanakaya, we're looking at the actual manifestations of Buddha, not so much as at images, which is one level more removed, where we have an image which reminds us of the actual manifestations of Buddha in our world. Historical Buddha, our present authentic teachers, and sometimes in our own experience, sometimes a text or a flower or something can bring us profound Dharma experience. This is what we're looking at in that verse, real Nirmanakaya.
Yeah, but those bones or teeth, whatever, they were never Nirmanakaya to begin with.
No, because what happened is the woman had faith in Buddha, and she thought that the tooth was a Buddha's tooth. So her faith is what helped her. For her, Buddha was present in the tooth, and her faith connected her to it. That was enough. That was enough in her case. There's a lot to think about in that example. But if you've got a real relic, and then you get, how can you say, double value. If you've got a real relic and you've got the faith, then it's a better version than if you've got a dog's tooth and the faith. It didn't say she became Buddha. It's, I mean, the way those stories are told, you have to be careful with the language.
Not a Buddha, but it advanced her in some way. I can't remember.
She advanced, it helped her on her path.
So
Yeah,
there was some energy there.
there wasn't some energy there was some energy in her faith. And that's the main thing. And it says, when we see the stories of great masters and great siddhas, they end up bowing down to dogs, bowing down to rocks, because they start to experience Buddha everywhere. It's not that the rock has it. I mean, if you look at it that way, everything has it. Everything. Buddha mind is everywhere in every moment, in anything. So when people start to really experience that, then it can be everywhere. But the main point, as that last verse we did today says, is the way we will get there is through faith. So this woman's faith was enhanced by the fake tooth, but it wasn't the tooth. It wasn't like there's Buddha up there somewhere saying, okay, I'm going to manifest down through that tooth now. I'm going to give her a blast through the tooth. And then the tooth became supercharged. What supercharged it came from within her, from her faith, which opened her up to the Buddha mind, which is everywhere, all the time. And it really helped her to advance. And it got rid of her stress. I mean, she was putting a lot of hope and investment in her son bringing back a Buddha relic from India. And the son forgot, and he picked up this old tooth when he remembered when he was almost home. So she'd been kind of waiting on this thing, putting a lot into it, and it put her mind at rest. And the relaxation, the faith, helped her move on.
Can I say something to agree with
Yeah.
you for just a moment?
Yeah, Murray, go ahead.
And then the answer, there are two questions answer each other. And that we're not worshiping the statue. We invite Tara or Chenrezig or Buddha in the beginning of the puja to come to the statue. And at the end, we ask them to remain with the statue. We empower the statue. We're not praying to the object. We're praying to what the object represents. In the same way, she wasn't praying. She empowered that tooth because in her mind, in her heart, she believed it was a Buddha relic. So she empowered that and got the blessings of her own empowerment. We're not, it's the mental object that we're dealing with, not the actual physical partless particles that don't truly exist anyway. So then the empowerment is what gives the blessing.
Yeah, you can see it that way too, but there's a lot to think about in that example. There's a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things I wanted to point out was the Emerald Buddha in Thailand was the last example of the Buddha. The Emerald Buddha was covered in clay, and then for some reason somebody took it off, and then there was the Emerald Buddha underneath.
Nice.
And so it was the actual stanza. Someone put it together and hid it away. That was really kind of unique. When I saw the Emerald Buddha, then I remembered this part of the Buddha Nature book teaching.
Thank you.
And the other thing that was very helpful was a term that Ari translated. Kempa was calling them fleeting stains. The stains are not permanent. They're actually fleeting. On their own, they're disappearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're doing
Harry got that one from me.
There you go, fleeting stains. So I'm bringing it back home. I think that's a very good concept to look at the stains. Yeah.
Funny word, huh? Fleeting. But anyway, when you think about it.
Because we think we're cursed with this sin from a Judeo-Christian perspective, that we got these sins that are going to, we carry along, and even from Buddhism, we have to purify them. But in the right state of mind, they just disappear, fleet away, fly away.
Fleet, yes, they fleet. There's a whole fleet of them too.
Myron, when you said that, I was thinking of bugs on the windshield and how you just got to wipe them off, but some of them get they're quite hard to scrub off the screen.
You're a lucky man. You live in a place where there's still bugs.
Well, they're very rare. I've had one or two this year, but yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But
I remember driving 16th Karmapa. He was appalled. Because in those days, when was it? 1970s. They're just covered, sometimes we were hours on the road. He was really saddened, I didn't actually see a tear, but there were just so many boom, 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 like this. He was so devastated by it. Sorry,
Khenpo has a song for that. Khenpo has a song to answer that question. Because
I interrupted you. Sorry, I'm sorry, Myron, but I interrupted Chris, and I'd like to hear what he wanted to say.
Oh, it was just a quick thing, just to kind of add to the theme of what was being said earlier. Was because I've heard people accusing Buddhists, especially, of like what's the word, idolatry. And to me, this is the difference between idolatry. But it's quite a subtle one, difference between idolatry of actually believing the object itself is the thing, and the object being the mental focus for the thing in the mind, for what you're aiming towards. It is quite a subtle one. Sometimes there's a danger of falling off either way, but to me, it's very clear, especially after things that you've said in the past, that about the images and the symbolism and the statues and so on, being a focal point for something else, not the thing themselves. And so I don't think about the Tibetan practices, especially, as being ones of worship, in the sense of worshipping an object, but actually focusing the mind on something else. That the objects are just a really good way to help focus our minds on that thing.
Yeah.
Distractions.
It's very nice these days because we live in a time when we're exposed to so much. And there are good sides to that. Like I'm thinking of Tibetan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism, right? And the Zen thing about the finger pointing at the moon. People don't look at the moon, they look at the finger. And then they don't just look at the finger, they start looking at the lines and the patterns on the finger and get lost. And Tibetan Buddhism is fantastic for symbolism. But at the same time, there's a danger that you can get lost in the methods, the prayers, like making these amazing mandalas and so on. Okay, it represents. So what it represents is very important. But if you get lost in the representation and the ritual and so on, you can be like somebody hypnotized by the master's finger. You're not looking at the moon it's pointing at. So these Buddha nature teachings are wonderful because they do. I find them very helpful in bringing us back to why we're doing all of this. And it's said that these teachings are the bridge between Mahayana and Vajrayana. It really does lay the ground for all the symbolism of Vajrayana, as do the Abhidharma teachings. And if you don't know Abhidharma and what all these various yidams and so on embody, literally, they are the body of the symbolic body. And not just symbolic body. I mean, we do these practices because they were somebody's wow moment in the past. Some Lama, some Rinpoche, deep meditation, very special being. That's how they experienced Buddhism. And that was their experience. That was real Dharmakaya or Sambhogakaya. And then they pass it on to us as a sadhana and as a practice. So it's not just like human created symbols. These are given symbols from a very pure place. And that's why they have power. That's why we call it empowerment. They're empowered symbols.
I find the Chenrezig practice really powerful in that respect, and it's work in progress. And thank you for your part in that. That's, yeah.
Just to comment on Chris's insects on the car windscreen, I often think of that. It's quite amazing how it's different now. I mean, as you say, years ago that you'd be covered, the windscreen would be covered, and now there's hardly any. Well, where I drive anyway, and it's sort of sad but happy. I mean, it's sad that there are so few insects about, but happy that one's killing less as one drives along. So I'm not quite sure how to think about it. I have a question though. You emphasized that like there's no point in giving teachings there if the person is here, and if you give the wrong teaching, it could be not good for them as opposed to helpful. And it's this problem is the right word, I suppose. When somebody asks you a question, I mean, I'm aware I know so little, and I know so little about their real story. It almost makes you want to say nothing. But at the same time, if one's trying to be a bodhisattva and helpful, you feel you should try and help them by saying something. And there's this dichotomy between do you say nothing or do you do your best to say something that actually helps them?
I think there's a big difference between personal guidance, which is tailored to somebody, and the Buddha's teachings in general. I mean, there is so much of Buddha's teaching is always and generally true about impermanence, about suffering, about the six realms, and so on. That's not personal; it's true for everybody, and most things which are on a sutra level, I think, are fairly okay to share. Certainly everything that's basic Dharma, first turning of the wheel of Dharma, to share as truths. For a person, restraint's always a good thing. Sometimes we cause more damage than benefit. If we can point somebody in the direction of a authentic teacher who can help them, if it's for personal guidance. But then I think after that it becomes a personal decision. If you know the person well and it's something pretty bloody obvious that and you're quite certain about it, you'll kind of know. Especially if you take refuge, if you do the prayers, you've got a good Dharma connection. You should be developing an inner moral compass that kind of gives you uneasy feelings if you're starting to say something or go somewhere which is beyond your capacity or which is dangerous, but always erring on the side of caution. But there's so much general Dharma that's helpful that we can share. And then also saying, well, this helped me, I don't know if it would help you, is also relevant sometimes. There's not an answer to your question here. I'm just rambling, but it's just bits and pieces that come to mind.
No, that's helpful. Thanks.
I mean, it would be a shame not to help somebody because you're being too, self-critical, scared to say something. That would be a shame. But then I've lived in Dharma centers most of my life, and some people can be too keen to share Dharma. They want every opportunity is for them. So It's a huge topic, really, Dharma teaching. And I remember the early days in Samiling in the 1970s, just in conversations with Akon Rinpoche and the one or two people who came in those very early years. I mean, there weren't very many Dharma people, and Akon Rinpoche, I tell you what I'm thinking about. We had 3 people who came up to Samiling and who'd been coming up since the time that Trungpa Rinpoche was there. They were actually Trungpa Rinpoche's followers who couldn't follow him to America. They didn't have the money or the circumstance, so they were there. And Akon Rinpoche said, Trungpa Rinpoche told these 3 people specifically, you are not to teach Dharma. Right? He said, you're to learn, you're to practice, but you're not to teach. And as the 70s and the 80s went by, they couldn't help it. They set themselves up as Dharma teachers, and then it's a strange situation because people got benefit from them. I mean, this is the strange thing. They didn't ought to be teaching some of the things they were teaching, because usually once people set themselves up as Dharma teachers, they tend to go to the high end of Dharma rather than the basic, impermanence and suffering. They tend to be more on the shunyata and emptiness kind of, deep teachings. And anyway, they set themselves up, and I remember the previous Kalu Rinpoche saying, it's better to have very few but very good teachers than lots and lots of mediocre ones everywhere. And, for Vajrayana. For the rest, it's fine.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, time for, lunch or supper or whatever it is, in whichever
Myron
part of
has
the
his
world
hand.
you are.
I just had a
Lunch
short
is for
thing.
you, Myron.
I have a short thing to say about the bugs on the windshield,
Right.
which was a comment that the Hindus and the Jains always went through. People would say, well, when you're walking, you're stepping on bugs. And so they used to sweep the ground in front of them in order to not step on any bugs. So someone asked Khenpo this when they were driving in a car, and he pointed out that you have good connections and bad connections. But if you don't have a connection, you can't pray for that sentient being. So if you've got a good connection or a bad connection, you can still pray for that being.
Yeah, of course.
So then he made up a song about having good connections and bad connections. May you still be born after this life in Sukhavati.
Yeah.
And so Ken probably knows that song. Share it with us someday.
Okay, well, we've done that. Thank you, Myron. Yeah, I mean, it is a connection. It's kind of, I'm not sure which would be best, to kill them and connect them or not to kill them in the first place. But anyway, have a good week, and we'll be back to, next week we can finish this Buddha Nature chapter. That's quite an achievement. Okay, all the best. Go well.
Ciao very much, Ken.
Thank you.
Ken.
Okay.
Thank you very
much,
Ken. Thank you,
Ciao
everyone.
now.